the path of time, and yet I fight this battle all alone. No one to cry to, no place to call home.
I read somewhere that great art demands sacrifice. I don't know if that's true for everyone, but it was true for me. In the last year I had lost 40 pounds. My relationship with Demery had fallen apart, and now my personal demons were public information. Fuck, a lot of the past year is a blur. I don't even remember making sap. I listened to it and I don't really remember doing any of it. I recognized the songs, but that was about it. That was right in the middle of all my shit. My constant on and off again cycle with heroin, and kicking was getting harder each time. I started taking Prozac hoping that would help me keep it together. But even before Dirt came out, I started using it again. So I decided the road was going to be my cure. People told me, well, power doesn't work with drugs like heroin. But I called bullshit on that and had the idea to go on tour with Grunt Truck. And this was towards the end of '92. I wanted to go back to the basics for a few weeks before we went on tour with Ozzy. We played some shitty little bars with the equipment packed onto a small truck, and with just us on a bus with a couple of cases of beer, some good acid, and we just cruised around and played in some shitholes with lots of sweaty people. It was really fun and exciting and made me feel alive again. And I didn't want to feel bored, tired, sleepy, and unmotivated anymore. We ended up calling it the Shitty Cities Tour. I had seen Grunt Truck play before and thought they rocked, but I didn't know the guys personally yet. When our bands first met, we were kind of sizing each other up. Like, are these guys actually cool? We went out drinking that night, and by the next day, it seemed like we had known each other forever. We got into a shitload of trouble on that tour. We'd be in our hotel rooms in the middle of the night with nothing to do. It's after 2. All the bars are closed. And Jerry would prank call Denny's saying, "Hey, are you hiring? Is your manager there?" Then Jerry would be like, "Yeah, well, do you have fluorescent lights?" "Oh, you do? Well, I can't stand fluorescent lights, and I'll just bash them out. So you guys gotta get rid of those if I'm going to ever work there. Oh, and where's your manager?" And Jerry would go on and on like this for 15 or 20 minutes. At one town, we thought it would be a good idea to try cow tipping. We get into the pasture and all of a sudden we hear this big moo. And it's a bull come for us, and we all freak the fuck out and hightail it out of there. When Sean starts drinking, he turns into a crazy person. One time on the tour, he walked down the hallway of the hotel we were staying at and poured a little beer in each light. A few seconds later, each light bulb would explode. We got banned from that hotel. Another time, Sean walked into the restaurant of this ritzy hotel where brunch had been set up, and he stands up on a chair and starts peeing onto the dessert cart right in the middle of the fucking dining hall. Somehow we didn't get kicked out of that hotel. After the Shitty Cities tour, we opened for Ozzy for about a month, and I started getting high again. For the most part, the shows with Ozzy went well. We were finally getting love from crowds that were not ours. Everybody and their mom had heard of Man in the Box by this point. During the tour, Mike got fucked up by accidentally drinking a water bottle full of bleach. I had been using the bleach to clean my rig. It just looked like some water, and Mike chugged it before he could realize what the taste was. He had to be hospitalized, and we had to cancel a few shows. During the tour, we stopped at a state fairground that had a racetrack where people were riding around on trikes, and I took one for a spin, but I messed up and put my foot down while making a turn, kind of like how I normally do on a dirt bike, and the back wheel ran over my foot and broke it. And I didn't let that stop us, and I kept on performing with a wheelchair or on crutches. I didn't break my neck, so there's no excuse not to play. I was stage diving with my foot still in a cast. After the tour with Ozzy, we went back on tour with Gruntruck, and the Screaming Trees joined the tour. And this leg of the tour was much bigger rock venues and in much bigger cities than on the Shitty Cities tour. We traveled with 3 buses and a semi-truck full of gear and full road crews. Having the Screaming Trees with us made the tour epic. Mark Lanegan became my best friend. We had first met each other at a Capitol Hill dope house. Both of us were looking to score, though we'd never officially met before. We knew each other by sight and shook hands. I asked him, "Are you here for what I'm here for?" Mark said, "Yeah, I am, but my girl can't know about it." He said that because Demery is friends with his girl, and he'd been playing charades to convince her he was clean. We entered the stairwell together, but when I headed down, Mark headed up. I told him, "There's better shit down here, and cheaper." I hooked him up with my dealer. It was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Mark is the meanest nice guy you've ever met. He's a true poet and totally authentic in all aspects of life. His voice is just incredible. I heard someone describe it perfectly as scratchy as a 3-day beard, yet as supple and pliable as moccasin leather. We spent countless days and nights together, cracking each other up until we lost our voices. Once, while watching the late-night rerun of Jerry Springer, Mark began to laugh uncontrollably at the fucked up, totally crazy expression on the face of one of the guests. I was sitting on the floor in front of him. Suddenly I turned around with the exact same fucked up, ridiculous expression on my face. Mark just lost his damn mind. We would talk about everything. Love and spirituality, our hopes and fears, or just kicking the shit while nursing a nod, and shared stuff with Mark that nobody else in the world knows. Our time touring with the Screaming Trees was pure sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Off stage, it was a wild, crazy, dark, drug and alcohol-fueled frat party that lasted the whole tour, with Mark and I raising hell, behaving like teenagers and staying up for days on end. We took whatever drugs came our way. Heroin, cocaine, painkillers, literally anything. Susan Silver hired bodyguards to try to keep me in check and to keep away anyone trying to pass me drugs. But that didn't stop us. One night, this chick Mike was hanging out with gave him a bottle of Dilaudid. Mike came up to Mark and me and said, "I got something you guys might be interested in." Mark and I both grabbed for it at the same time, while trying not to look too eager. We said, "Thanks, Mike. Yeah, we can probably find something to do with it." We spent the next few days shooting the stuff in a hazy bliss. When we ran out, it was back to drinking like we had a death wish, until we were able to get our hands on some opiates again. One night when we were super shit-faced, we tore apart the back lounge of the bus in a frenzy, leaving a huge fucking mess. This happened when Susan Silver had come out and joined the tour for a few dates. The next day she told Mark and me that we had to clean up the mess immediately, and that Mark was no longer allowed to ride on my bus. Girls were throwing themselves at us wherever we went. On a weekend off in Florida, Mark and I were having a round-the-clock party with 3 hot babes we'd met after a show. Every couple of hours, Mark would leave the hotel, go out to our tour bus and grab some beer. At the time, we had a temporary bus driver who was a real redneck. Each trip to the bus to grab more booze, Mark had to walk past him and this manly woman seated next to him. She wore a denim vest covered in a ton of truck stop buttons with corny crap written on them. And after Mark grabbed the liquor, he would say on his way out, "Thanks, Roscoe," and then head back up to the party. On the way out after his 30th booze run, Mark said, "Thanks, Roscoe," once more. But this time the lady got up, acting all hot and bothered, and blocked the exit, while yelling in Mark's face, saying, "And his name is Royce, goddammit." We had a show in Philadelphia on November 25th, which is Mark's birthday. To celebrate, Mark and I went back to the hotel to get high. We ran into the guys from the rap group House of Pain, who were staying in the same hotel. Their single Jump Around was a huge hit at the time. Everlast invited us to come hang out and party. Before meeting up with him, we each did a shot of some potent East Coast white powdered heroin. By the time we got up to Everlast's room, Mark was in such a heavy nod that he couldn't keep his head up. I had to cover for Mark by telling Everlast, "It's cool, he just smoked some great weed."
I can't make it down, so get out your seat and jump around, jump around, jump around, jump around.
When we were in Boston, Mark got so wasted, he ended up in the crowded dressing room going down on a hot red-haired stripper. Whenever the door to the dressing room opened, a group of audience members could clearly see what he was doing, but Mark didn't care. When Mark was drunk, nothing was off limits. While we were headed to Montreal, Mark noticed a slight tightness and heat where he had shot up in Philly. By the time we arrived in Quebec, his entire arm had ballooned to twice its normal size and was flaming hot and bright red. He first went to see a doctor in the sketchy little urgent care. The moment he took off his shirt, the doctor said, "You have to go to the hospital immediately. You have a blood infection. You'll be lucky if you don't lose that arm." Once he got to the hospital, a doctor hooked him up to IV antibiotics. With a ballpoint pen, the doctor drew a line around the inflamed area, all the way from his shoulder to his wrist, and said, "I'm going to come back in 12 hours. And if the redness is gone outside the line, I'm afraid we're going to have to amputate your arm at the shoulder." I filled in for Mark at the show that night and sang some Screaming Tree songs.
When you learned that Layne Staley was singer?
After the show, I went to see him in the hospital. Seeing him lying in the hallway with his huge bright red swollen arm was too much. I broke down in tears. Part of me felt responsible. All the signs were pointing to him losing his arm. He was never given a room, just a gurney lined up with several others in the hallway. Every 12 hours for the next 8 days, someone would come to check his arm. One doctor would say, "It looks like it's getting better. We may be able to let you go tomorrow." And then 12 hours later, a different doctor would say, "If this thing isn't better by tomorrow, we may have to take it off." And Mark became obsessed with getting his last blowjob as a two-armed person. Every day, his friend John Hicks tried to get a hooker past security with the idea that Mark would roll his IV stand down the hall into the stairwell and receive one final blowjob as a two-armed person. And they were never able to pull it off. Finally, his swelling started to go away, and after 8 days, he was released. He rejoined the tour in Cleveland and spent his first evening back partying with 2 strippers all night in a hotel sauna, which he broke into after hours. He got a blowjob from one of the strippers, and the next day he started shooting dope again. This was our lifestyle now, and nothing short of death would change our mindset. A few weeks later at a show in Los Angeles, Everlast tracked down Mark backstage before the concert. He told Mark, "Hey man, I got something special for you," with a big smile on his face. Mark got all excited thinking it was some dope, but Everlast broke out a large bag of weed. Mark couldn't hold back his disappointment and said, "Oh damn." Everlast asked, "What's wrong, bro?" Mark just said, "I'm sorry man, I just thought it was something else." Everlast goes, "But you were so high in Philly. I thought you'd appreciate it." And Mark said, "Dude, I so appreciate it, but I just quit smoking. Once you get a taste for opiates, nothing else satisfies." And closed out 92 by performing at MTV's New Year's Eve party.
Who are they? These are my boys. Let's get down and dirty with Alice in Chains. Come on.
We were bigger and more successful than ever before. But I was also partying harder than I ever have. One of my ways of dealing with success, or maybe my only way, was to get really high. It all happened so fast. I've never been really good with people and crowds. Going out and meeting 100 people and shaking their hands makes me nervous. Since I can remember, I've been this fucked up kid that just didn't fit in and turned to something to make me feel like everyone else. When I was 12 or so, it became drugs. I experimented a lot with them. I like to refer to myself as a 20-year drug research analyst. And through my analysis, I found I've always used substances to numb the pain inside.
Say
I kicked off '93 by going to a ministry show. I went backstage into their dressing room and saw Mike Scotch shooting up. I asked him if I could try. He looked me right in the eye, held up a syringe and said, "Are you sure you want to do this, man?" I nodded. I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. I did a dose and passed out and didn't wake up. Mike said I was barely breathing. He didn't know if I was dead or alive. Neither did I. I was in oblivion. Mike had to keep checking on me to make sure I was okay. Once I woke up, I got some more dope and shot up again. Back then, heroin still felt glamorous. In January, we started a long touring schedule. Tensions in the band were at an all-time high, and Mike became the scapegoat. Mike wasn't innocent by any means. He broke just about every rule in the book. He had stopped showing up for band practice and had a shitty attitude with everyone. He was starting to believe that the number of blowjobs you've received was how successful you were as a human being. But what was most apparent was that Mike's drug use was becoming a huge problem. So was mine, but you can't just replace a lead singer. Everyone except me wanted Mike out. The label was pushing for it. Susan was pushing for it. They said it had to be done on a business level, but Mike is my family. We lived together. We starved together. We came up together. We were supposed to ride this thing out together. I was closer to Mike than anyone else in the band. It was never the same after he left. It really fucked me up. And it fucked all of us up. With Mike gone, I had no one to cry to. On January 22nd, we performed our last show with Mike. The show was in Rio de Janeiro, and a bunch of other bands were there, including Nirvana and the Chili Peppers. While we were riding in a helicopter on the way to the show, Mike had to puke mid-flight because of withdrawals, and he stuck his head outside of the chopper to do it. When we landed in Brazil, we found out that there was coke but no heroin. Kurt Cobain and I figured out a solution where he would pay for the heroin, and then I would pay for the plane to bring it down. I shot Mike up a couple of times before the show. When he was playing wood, he could barely move. And his knees were shaking and his hands weren't working the way he wanted them to. And he felt like he was going to collapse, but he was able to make it through the set. That was a fucking wild show. After the show, Mike went with Kurt and Courtney and shot up all night. And then he came to my room and we shot up together. And I didn't know he had been shooting up with Kurt. He immediately collapsed after the jab and started overdosing. He flatlined and I freaked the fuck out. I dragged him into the shower to try and wake him up. And I tried everything I could think of, but nothing was working. He was dead for 11 minutes. 11 fucking minutes. By some kind of miracle, he finally woke up. I just punched him in the face while sobbing. 5 years ago, we came together as brothers with nothing but a shared dream to create something special and become rock stars. And we got it all. The money, the fame, the girls, the drugs. But what comes along with being a rock star is nothing at all. Not one iota of what I expected it to be like. You end up with everything that counts and nothing that matters.
It might seem an afterthought. Yes, it hurts to know you're bought. It's your decision.
We only made one phone call for a replacement. Mike and Inez from Ozzy's band. If we were going to get another bass player, we were going to have to at least get another guy with the same name, that smokes the same cigarettes, that plays the same bass and looks the same. Mike initially thought it would be a temporary gig. He explained the situation to Ozzy and asked if he should go. Ozzy said, "If you don't go, you're going to be in the hospital for about 7 days." Mike's like, "Why is that?" Ozzy goes, "It's going to take them that long to get my foot out of your ass." Mike and Inez met us in London. We spent the first day just hanging out and smoking some killer hash. We rented out a room at a rehearsal studio. And for the next 2 days, we gave Mike a crash course in our catalog. He's a pro. After just 2 days, he knew the songs inside and out. We then started our European tour with the Screaming Trees. We were going to have Grunt Truck come with us too, but their singer Ben McMillan started copying me. My hairstyle, my clothes, everything. It got to the point where it made me feel really weird. Fuck, I don't even feel comfortable being me. I sure as hell didn't want another version of me around. So we parted ways. Grunt Truck wound up opening for Pantera.
Jump, fuck.
In London, Mark and I hooked up with an American guy we knew named Craig Pike. Our London connection at the time. He used to play bass for Iggy Pop. Now he's holed up in this abandoned house with no electricity or running water. He spent some of his time playing bass for a London band called The Hypnotics, but usually he was strung out and scoring drugs for people to feed his own habit. And it was sad seeing drugs bring someone with potential so low. Mark and I stayed strung out the entire tour. The effort it took just to stay well was a full-time job. We were entering a new country almost daily, and clearing customs took a couple hours. Drug-sniffing dogs were brought on board the buses. They would go through every bunk and sniff around, while their handlers emptied out our pockets and went through our wallets. Sometimes the border agents made us unload everything out of the trailers, all the gear, our personal stuff, everything. And then customs officials with dogs would search through it all. So if there was anything on you or in the bus, you were fucked. Getting caught meant probable incarceration, a permanent ban from the country, and the confiscation of the bus and all the equipment by the state authorities. A massive fuck up with the most serious consequences. We got into the habit of finishing all the drugs we had on us before leaving one country and entering another. We'd stop a few miles before a border crossing, so we could dump anything we still had. Any drugs, paraphernalia, syringes, and spoons, unless we had a connection already lined up. We would hit the streets to score immediately upon arriving in the next city. Mark's friend John Hicks from Tennessee was traveling with us. It meant we needed heroin and works for all three of us. It was often easier to find the dope than the needles, and snorting the powdered dope wasn't going to cut it. We'd become so accustomed to shooting the black tar heroin we used back home that unless it was going straight into a vein, we were just wasting good gear. So not only did we need outfits and dope, but you also had to use citrus to break down European dope before injecting it. It was rumored that if you were to use lemon juice instead of the powdered citric acid found in shops, you risked fucking up your eyesight and possibly losing it altogether. Nonetheless, there were several times we arrived at a hotel late at night with no bar or room service open, and we found ourselves prowling the hallways looking for a slice of lemon left in a glass on someone's room service tray placed outside their door. Mark found a place to hide a syringe inside one of the bus's bunks. There was a tiny, unnoticeable crack in the wall, just big enough to conceal one syringe. If the syringe was bleached to remove any scent, it could be smuggled past Border Patrol. It was a good thing, because right when Mark found the hiding spot, we were unable to find any new rigs for several days. Mark Hicks and I used that same syringe often enough that it became so dull. We took to sharpening it on the rough part of a matchbox before every use. One late night after arriving in a new country, the three of us quickly found some heroin on the street, and then went back to the bus to retrieve the syringe. The bus wasn't connected to any electrical source, and the interior lights didn't work. Quietly, we fumbled and felt around inside until we finally found the bunk, using just a cigarette lighter for light. Hicks had the skinniest arms, so he got up in the bunk to try to fetch our needle. Though he tried and tried, and his sweaty, trembling, dope-sick fingers just could not latch onto the rig in the darkness. It took several minutes but felt like hours. We were all feeling dope-sick and needed to get well. Finally, Hicks got it out of the tiny crack and took the cap off to confirm the needle itself was intact. We cheered like we had won the lottery. From the bunk directly below our hiding spot came the loudest scream I've ever heard. It turned out the bus driver had been sleeping there. During the frenzy, Hicks swung his arm out and buried the needle in Mark's arm. The bus driver yelled, "What the fuck's going on in here?" Mark said through clenched teeth, "Nothing, man, so sorry to wake you," while pulling the needle out of his arm. We got off the bus, went inside, and proceeded to get well, once more holding at bay the sickness that now dogged us every minute of every day. The tour became all about trying to avoid the hell of withdrawal. We found ourselves in a lot of bad situations with sketchy, damaged, and dangerous people. Some of them legitimately crazy. People we'd not willingly have hung out with under any other circumstances. Like the couple of elderly hoarders who sold dope out of their council flat in the UK. They were so impressed to have musicians in their place. The guy said to us, "So you lads are musicians then? How exciting it must be. You know, we have nearly every Cliff Richard record ever made. Sweetheart, 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 go find the Cliff records to show these lads." "Oh, piss off, Johnny. You go find them. I can't find a bloody thing in this house." We were forced to sit among the huge piles of garbage for an hour and a half, drinking tea out of filthy cups before they finally broke out their wares. They let us do a shot in their gross, never-cleaned bathroom, then tried to entice us to stay even longer, with the promise of some surprise supposedly on its way. We did not hang around. We'd had enough surprises for one day. There was this stuck-up Swedish couple we forced ourselves to sit with in the back lounge of my bus. Outside a concert hall in Ghent, Belgium, they endlessly babbled pretentious nonsense. We were stuck listening to the young blonde girlfriend, as narcissistic as she was physically beautiful, tell us the incredibly long list of bands she'd partied with, who she thought were so much better than us, and we nearly lost our shit, just waiting for them to hand over a bag of heroin and a bag of coke to sell us. We nicknamed them the King and Queen of Sweden. They stood for the absolute worst Europe had to offer. These were the kind of people drugs forced us to spend time with on a regular basis, along with every other type of hustler, hipster, huckster, or hobo. Back in London, Mark Hicks and I spent a day in a hotel room watching TV and getting high. It was a scorcher in the UK, and we were happy to just be able to hang out in an air-conditioned room together with no commitments or show, and no freaks around to put up with, in between doing shots of dope every now and then. We cleaned all of our rigs out in the same glass of water that had turned pink with blood. It wasn't a big deal to clean our syringes in the same water. We had been sharing needles for so long that if one of us had something, we all had it by now. Out of the blue, someone knocked on our door. Hicks got up to see who it was, and not bothering to put anything away, Mark and I continued to enjoy our nod while sitting at a table together. John barely opened the door. Then suddenly, the fucking King and Queen of Sweden came bursting through the door. My high instantly disappeared. Oh my fucking god. It's so hot out there. We've been out there for hours, cried the stupid blonde girl. Thank fuck we finally found you guys, she said, while walking around like she owned the place. Her loser drug dealer boyfriend followed behind, carrying bags of women's designer clothing. Oh my fucking god. I'm so thirsty, she yelled, till her eyes locked onto the glass of pink water sitting on the table between Mark and me. She walked right across the room and grabbed the glass filled to the brim with the muddy pink fluid, tainted with the blood of 3 hardcore international junkies. Mark began to raise his arm to stop her. I looked Mark dead in the eyes and grabbed his arm and squeezed it tight in a gesture that was unmistakable. Let her drink it. In a flash, she had raised the glass straight to her lips. The Queen of Sweden was someone used to getting and taking whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted it. We watched in shock, horror, and joy as she slammed the entire contents of the glass in one go. When we finally managed to get rid of those Euro scumbags, the 3 of us looked at each other and slowly began to chuckle at what had just happened. And eventually we began to howl, flailing ourselves around the room, laughing until we were sick. We kept playing it out over and over again in our heads. And just when I thought I was too exhausted to laugh anymore, we would look at one another and start howling again. The revenge was so perfect and so poetic. It was like a Greek myth.
Can you say
We laughed for hours until we were completely spent. You could not have scripted a more fucked up scene, complete with perfectly cast character actors if you tried. And if I'd ever met someone more deserving of a drink of water, and I couldn't remember who. We did a show in Sweden, and in the audience there was a skinhead making Nazi salutes and beating the crap out of people. He was thrashing around in a circle while elbowing people in the face and started punching people out. And I told the audience, "We love you fucking Swedish people." And then I pointed the skinhead out and said to him, "Come on up on stage. Come on, man. Come join the band. Have a good time." The skinhead was really excited. Everyone else is looking at me saying, "Why the fuck is Layne being nice to this douchebag?" After the show, we were hearing rumors that shit's gonna hit the fan. I went to the tour bus to get on the ferry to Finland. And the rest of the band and crew went back to the hotel as they were about to check out. The cops showed up, and the skinhead had called the police. And they seized my band and crew members' passports. And when they discovered I wasn't there, the pigs hurried to the ferry and arrested me. They grilled me for hours. Luckily, the skinhead's brother, who was also at the concert, went to the police and told them his brother had been picking on people at the show, and I helped stop him. At that point, the police congratulated me and let us go. And I had been bullied when I was a kid for being short and weird. When I finally got into a position of power, I wasn't going to let that kind of crap fly. I like to think that our fans are intelligent. There's a lot of them that are thinking about what is being said, and not just banging their heads drinking JD, and puking on the guys next to them in the crowd. And I like to think that the people who are choosing to listen to our music are intelligent enough to know that what I'm saying in the songs is watch your ass and have a good time, but not too good of a time. We went to Paris to do a couple shows. But the venue had a decibel limit to keep the noise levels in check when Mike and Sean tested their gear. They were told it was already too loud, and that was before the PA and monitors were even turned on. We decided to call off the shows. I stayed in my hotel room so they could say I was sick, and we would have a legal excuse to cancel the show. When we finally got on a plane for Seattle, I was more strung out and exhausted than I'd ever been before.
When it's all worn out, I'd rather go without.
In April of '93, we went to the studio with Mike and Inez for the first time to record 2 songs for the soundtrack of a movie called The Last Action Hero. And the songs were What the Hell Have I? And A Little Bitter.
The face before me flies. Laughs at me inside. Masks are made to hide the glow. Shining eyes.
We were really happy with both songs. It's too bad the movie was so crappy. I was pretty checked out during the whole session. I didn't really want to be in this band anymore, and they won't let me quit. They told me I'm contractually obligated, so stick with it, big guy. Those guys are crazy. They're holding my family hostage. All jokes aside, I was pretty burnt out on the band. During the summer of '93, we performed at Lollapalooza. At the beginning, I was trying to stay clean and keep myself together. So I got my own bus with a recording studio and had a security guard traveling with me at all times. And I was looking for external answers to an internal problem. About a week or so into the tour, I relapsed. The grind of the road and the whole rock lifestyle were ultimately leading me towards sadness and a sense of unfulfillment. And I started turning to other forms of expression. Music is the career I'm lucky enough to get paid for, but I have other desires and passions. The way I see it, music was the doorway that led me to drawing, photography, and writing. I like that it's okay to be vulnerable and let your emotions come through in art. When you talk about things beneath the surface, people often pass judgment and get uncomfortable and think you're soft for showing genuine emotions. I was dealing with the weight of my career and everything that entailed. I was also carrying the weight of a lot of things from my past that I could never confront. And on top of that, I was paying for my prior drug use. And there are lasting consequences for using drugs. You put all that together, and it's fucking heavy. Art, I guess, is my form of personal therapy to lighten my load. Lollapalooza was probably one of, if not the funnest tour we've ever done, because there was so much interaction between the bands, with the exception of Arrested Development. Everybody was playing. We were playing around with each other and doing it on stage. It was one of those tours where lifelong friendships were made. Jerry would perform with Fishbone, and the guys from Fishbone would perform with us. Sometimes I would sing for Front 242 or Tool. Tom Morello and I had a lot of laughs on that tour. I would wake up early every day just to see Rage play. Tom showed me how to play guitar, so anytime you hear me mess up, it's his fault. We would have a daily argument about who's more metal. It would be part metal trivia and part posturing. By the end, we agreed. I was a bit more metal.
Some of those that work forces draw the same that burn crosses. Killing in the name of.
I also became good friends with the babes in Toyland. Almost every day I would go hang out with them. Their lead singer Kat be yelling, and I began hooking up and doing drugs together. She was like a gross version of the type of girl I liked. Basically like a fucked up version of Demery. We had fun for a while, but that chick is crazy. So I ended whatever the hell was going on between us. Kat did not take rejection well. She decided to cope by doing a shitload of heroin and overdosed on the bus after a show in San Francisco. And another show. She wanted to hitch a ride on my tour bus, and I told her, "No, you're going crazy." And she proceeded to jump on my bus as it was moving and tore off a windshield wiper blade in a rage. She could be a real spoiled brat. If she didn't get what she wanted, then would go cause chaos. It got to the point where my crew started running interference to keep Kat away from me. She tried to make me feel guilty about her overdose, but it's not my responsibility to look after her. And I felt bad about it, but it wasn't my fault. Everyone's got to own up to the choices they've made. During the tour, Jerry called up Toby Wright, asking if he would be interested in recording an EP with us. Toby said, "Absolutely. Can you send me any of the songs?" Jerry told him, "We're on our way home. By the time they get to you, we'll already be done." We booked 10 days at the London Bridge studio in September of '93. The first day at the studio, we were just sharing our experiences on the road with Toby. Wright said, "Wow, sounds awesome. So you wrote a lot on the road." Jerry replied, "Funny thing about the songs, we don't have any." We all started laughing. Toby asked us, "Okay, what do you want to do for the next 10 days?" We responded, "Is it alright if we just jam?" We had just gotten off the road, where we had traveled something like 50,000 miles and played ear-blasting music every night. All we wanted was to go into the studio for a few days with our acoustic guitars and see what happened. We never really planned on the music we made at that time to be released, but the record label heard it and they really liked it. It was more their idea to release it than it was ours. For us, it was just the experience of 4 guys getting together in the studio and making some music. That music is what you hear on Jar of Flies. The album was written and recorded in 5 days. We would spend 14 to 18 hours in the studio each day. We wanted the album's acoustic sound to be as natural as possible. And so I instructed Toby to not use Pro Tools. I've always felt analog sounded better for Alice.
Train in blue, I bleed for you. You think it's funny, well you're drowning in it too. Every day something hits me also.
Jerry always has a song or two in his back pocket. He had already written Don't Follow and No Excuses. Whale and Wasp is another song that he had lying around for a while. It was dedicated to his mother. In fact, it's one of his earliest pieces of music. He was just 18 or 19 when he wrote it. So when we started writing for Jar of Flies, you had to remember how the song went. Mike and Inez talked about putting some strings on the record, and we thought Whale and Wasp would be a good song for that. As for why it's called Whale and Wasp, we did so because that's basically what it sounded like. A conversation between whales and wasps. Jerry wrote Don't Follow in Dublin, Ireland. We'd been on the road for practically 2 years and we were pretty beat up. And he was missing home. So he wrote that song in the dressing room at the gig we were playing. A harmonica player was brought in. They sent over this old guy. He was a good player, but he would grunt when he was playing. These really weird, kind of disgusting grunting noises. Toby would say, "Hey, that sounded great. Can you do it with less grunting noises?" And the guy would be like, "Oh yeah, sorry about that." He would do it again, but he'd still make the same grunting noises. After an hour of his grunting, it was clear we needed someone else. Chris Cornell's friend David Atkinson came in and nailed it in one take.
Pass me down that bottle. Hey, you can't shake me round now. I get so lost and don't know how. Yeah, it hurts to care about now.
I've never been the biggest fan of that song. I don't know what it is. Maybe it just hits too close to home. While I was recording my vocals, I added, "How now, brown cow?" after the lines, "It hurts to care, I'm going down." In the final version of the song, Jerry had it taken out. It was Jerry's concept that he would sing the first half, and then I would sing the second half. It's telling a story of people growing apart, but there's always 2 sides to the story. And the rest of the songs were just spontaneous. We just went in with no pressure at all and wrote whatever we wrote. And whatever we came out with was going to be it. We got pretty drunk and sat around smoking weed. We didn't even think about song structures. We were just jamming. We recorded everything. For Swing on This, we forced Mike to play that goofy bass line. He was playing all this other intricate stuff. But we said, no, just play the stupidest line. At first he was like, oh man, this is so dumb. But then we started jamming on it, and he was getting really into it. Mike plays the nastiest, darkest shit, but he's got the sweetest heart in the world. Some of the songs fade in and out, because some of them were originally 15 minutes long, and that show was originally much longer. We just played that track for 7 or 8 minutes, and then took a little section out. After we recorded something we liked, I would go upstairs alone and write some lyrics and a melody. A little later I'd come down with a little demo on a 4-track recorder. We'd all listen and the other guys would say, "Oh yeah." Then I'd run back upstairs and keep going. And it was a magical time. The music on Jar of Flies might be kind of dreamy, but some of the lyrics are raw as fuck. I tend to write about whatever's in my head at the moment. The lyrics on Jar of Flies aren't about any particular thing. It's not like I pick up the newspaper or watch the news for inspiration. It's nothing that calculated. It could be something I feel or something I notice around me. It's really hard to say. And the bottom line is, we write about ourselves because we know ourselves. All there is to know about me can be found in my songs. There was a lot of experimentation on Jar of Flies. I'd have the words, but I'd work on the harmonies. I'd add a harmony and then I'd go and add another one to make the first one work. The guy who was engineering would look at me and go, "It doesn't fit." And I'd have to tell him to wait until the next one was on. All my harmonies are done by feel, and they're easier to do than the actual main vocal. I can come up with those with no problem. I wasn't the only one experimenting. Sean got a teeny drum set for the studio that had all these congas and things, and started messing around on that. Instead of overdubbing No Excuses, he played it all at once, and that's how that drum track came to be. Mike played a 12-string guitar and I Stay Away, and we all sang on it. We wanted an orchestra on the song. Matt from Soundgarden's girlfriend April plays viola, and brought a cello player and 2 violinists. Toby thought Jerry should chart out everything he wanted him to play into sheet music, and Jerry was like, "No, I'll just tell him what to play." He went into the big room with a guitar in hand, sat down on a metal folding chair, and walked the other musicians through the song, explaining what he had in mind. Jerry is fearless. Show an orchestra their parts on a guitar is not something you normally do, because orchestra musicians usually don't work that way. But Jerry was living and breathing these songs. You learn how to speak the language of music when it becomes your life. The title came from a science experiment Jerry did when he was in the 3rd grade. They gave him 2 jars full of flies. One of the jars they overfed, the other jar they underfed. And the one they overfed flourished for a while, And then all the flies died from overpopulation, and the one they underfed. Had most of the flies survive all year. I guess there's a message in there somewhere. Evidently that experiment had a big impact on Jerry. Like always, we just make the music for ourselves. And it's nice that a lot of people have gotten into it. But that wasn't the point. Especially with Jar of Flies. If those songs had never seen the light of day, if we had just done them for ourselves, that still would have been cool with me. Rocky Shank made the album cover again. We wanted the cover to be a young boy looking into a jar filled with flies. We asked him to use crazy colors in the shot. Rocky's assistant made a ton of trips up the street to gather hundreds of flies with a butterfly net at some horse stables. And the flies kept dying, the kid kept complaining, and his assistant kept bringing more flies. The path of time either brings people together or it pulls them apart. For the better part of the past 2 years, we'd been going full force, just running at top speed with our eyes closed. When life's moving that fast, you can't help but leave some things behind. And Demery and I decided to call off our engagement. I can definitely say rock and roll was a huge factor in us breaking up. It wasn't really about sex. While touring, I got the sex part out of the way. If I did not screw another girl for the rest of my life, I'd not be missing anything. I think women are so different chemically from men. This isn't a dig on women, but it makes it hard to sustain a relationship. They have periods they go through horrible, awful emotional swings, and trying to be logical with a person that's got a whole different logic running around in her brain is just impossible. When you're in a relationship, the girl usually instigates this big truth, that you were put on earth to be together. So when the fighting comes, it's really painful. After being with a person for a long time and being convinced that you're soulmates, you can get really crushed if things eventually fall apart. When we broke up, my life was just dismal. I didn't know how to live or what to do. It's hard to learn how to be by yourself when you're so used to relying on other people to have a good time. I had to come to terms with the reality that no matter what, when you turn off the lights at night, you're alone in your own head. I started to reason with myself. Okay, I got along for 20 years before I met her, and I had good times, and so I can be happy alone, and that worked for a while. I even began to believe I was better off without her, but I was dead wrong, and Demery was right. We were put on this rock to be together.
2 jumps in a week, bet you think that's pretty clever, don't you, boy? Flying on your motorcycle, watching all the ground beneath you drop. You kill yourself for recognition, kill yourself to never ever stop. You broke another mirror, you're turning into something you are not. Don't leave me high, don't leave me dry, don't leave me high, don't leave me dry. Conversation, you'll be the one who cannot talk. All your insides fall to pieces, you just sit there wishing you could still make love.